Is Sony making you pay for better graphics? We have to talk about this insane detail on God of War Ragnarok, and if you have a disc-based PS5, you're going to want to stick around for the rest of this video. And real quick before we get into this PlayStation news, I just looked and about 74% of you are not subscribed to the channel yet, so if you want to stick around and make sure you see these videos as soon as they're uploaded, make sure you subscribe and set your notifications to all. If I had to pinpoint one aspect of Sony's games that helped them stand out from the rest of the competition, it's gotta be their attention to detail. Like for example, if you look at a game like Ghost of Tsushima, it's mechanically and just structurally very similar to something like Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Odyssey or Origin. One of the biggest selling points in the Assassin's Creed games and other games that Ubisoft makes like Far Cry, The Division 2, or Ghost Recon Breakpoint is that you have an absolutely massive map. But Ubisoft definitely pays the price for that, because when you play through these games, it's really easy to notice stuff like reused assets, a lot of repeated character dialogue, some buggy textures, bad graphics. Just across the board, the attention to detail is not there. And then with Ghost of Tsushima, Sucker Punch was more deliberate with like absolutely everything in that game. You've got multiple combat stances, side quests have cutscenes for pretty much every side quest in the game. You don't hear a ton of reused dialogue, and no matter what you're doing, from following a fox to its fox den or looking for a new hot spring, every collectible in the game gives you a meaningful upgrade so that you never feel like you're wasting your time. Now I know this comes off a little harsh, but Ubisoft really seems like they're more focused on game length and providing value through time. Like if you spend $60 on a Ubisoft game, you know you're going to get a lot of hours out of it, and it might not be the best game you've ever played, but it'll be largely a consistent experience across the board that you can play for a very long time. And then on Sony's end, they're more focused on that moment-to-moment gameplay, making sure that every second possible that you're spending in these worlds is fun, and while they might cap out at around 30 or 40 hours versus 60 to 100, you're going to remember a lot more of what you did in the Sony game. And that brings us to God of War Ragnarok, which is the next big Sony exclusive after Horizon Forbidden West. We obviously just got a trailer for it at the last PlayStation showcase, and people have been digging through it non-stop. And one of the coolest things they've found is that Atreus's quiver now has a drawing of his journey that he took with his dad in God of War 2018 to climb to the top of a big mountain and scatter his mom's ashes. Now underneath the tweet where this was shown off, people are pointing out that Atreus also had a drawing on his bow in the first game, which is definitely true, but this is an updated drawing that shows him traveling with his dad on the same line, not on the opposite side of it like in God of War 2018. And the point kind of still stands about attention to detail, because back in 2018, that was a very cool detail to see on Atreus's quiver, especially in PS4 games, right? I'm kind of sad to say it, but Sony was definitely still way ahead of the pack in terms of having attention to detail in their games back in 2018, and arguably they've gotten better at it than their competition in the few years since then. And this all kind of ties into Sony's big philosophy, which is to let a game take the amount of time it needs to be made to be made. They'll let it sit in the oven and they'll just say to the press, it'll be done when it's done. That's how you get attention to detail like this, and all of their games pretty much across the board have it, which is awesome. I mean, if you want an example of this, you can look at Days Gone, which was announced well before it came out, but by the time it came out, yes, it was a little bit buggy, but I guarantee you, if you went and talked to anyone at Ben's studio and said, did the multiple delays that you had on Days Gone help you make the best game possible? I guarantee you, every single one of those people would say, yeah, that definitely helped us out in the long run. And also, if you look at The Last of Us Part 1, that game was originally supposed to come out in May of the year it dropped, and then they delayed it by just 1 month to do a final polish pass. And Neil Druckmann has said multiple times that that essentially made the game a 10 out of 10 across the board instead of maybe like a 9 out of 10 or even an 8 out of 10 from another website. And I'm not trying to pit Sony against Microsoft here and say that like Microsoft never does this, because they have delayed games before that really need the time, Halo Infinite being a great example, but they also have canceled games that needed more time in the oven like Scalebound and Phantom Dust. Those were going to be two big exclusives on the Xbox One, and they were just canceled when they missed their deadlines. And of course, there are plenty of examples of third-party games that have great attention to detail like Red Dead Redemption 2, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Doom Eternal, but those are a lot more few and far between than the stuff that Sony puts out. Like, it almost feels like every game Sony makes has an insane amount of attention to detail. And the craziest thing is, it's almost always little stuff that's making these most memorable moments. Like in The Last of Us Part 2, one of my favorite moments in that game is when you find that person playing Hotline Miami on the Vita, and you can hear the music from that game playing after you murder that person. And in Uncharted 4, after you have dinner in the beginning of the game, you can sit down with Elena and actually play through Crash Bandicoot, which is awesome. And then in Horizon Zero Dawn, a lot of people don't know this, but you can go back to Rost's grave throughout the game, and Aloy will tell him what's going on in the world, and she'll have different dialogue depending on when you come to that grave in the game. game. That's what's really made those games stick with me for a very long time, and while I had a ton of fun playing through Mad Max earlier this year, I could not tell you a single thing from that game's story, you know? It's just like a different experience overall because it feels like a box-checking open world game versus an experience. That's what's getting me excited for the future of the PS5 with games like Horizon Forbidden West, Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, God of War Ragnarok. That's why I'm excited to pay $70 for those games instead of just saying, oh, I'll play it when it's on Game Pass, like I do a lot with Microsoft stuff. So earlier this month, I noticed that Microsoft brought Dolby Vision over to the Xbox Series X and Series S, and at the time I was like, cool, but I really just moved on pretty quickly because I'm gonna be real with you guys, I didn't really know what Dolby Vision was. I just knew that when I go to the movie theater, I really like the Dolby Vision theater because it just looks really good. But at the time, I noticed people were excited about this and they were asking if it was going to come to PS5, so I did some research, and basically what Dolby Vision is like a certification for HDR content where TV manufacturers can license that from Dolby and say that, yeah, we have a Dolby Vision TV and that's different from HDR10 and looks a lot better by most, if not all accounts. And the reason it's better is that Dolby looks at content frame by frame and recolors each frame to look as good as possible, whereas something like HDR10 just does a flat recolor across the board. The big drawback with Dolby Vision though, obviously, is that if you want it, you have to go out and buy a new TV, and Dolby Vision TVs are kind of expensive, and then of course it has to be done on a movie by movie or game by game basis. So like on Xbox, they're only supporting 10 games at launch. Most of them are older games except for stuff like Psychonauts 2 and the upcoming Guardians of the Galaxy game. Now I mentioned that people are wondering if this is going to come to the PS5, and because we're talking about Sony here, the answer is yes, but kind of, and it's really complicated, so we'll just go into it. So yes, Sony did announce that something a lot like Dolby Vision is coming to the PS5 in a future update, but they are going to develop it themselves. It's going to be called HDR Tone Mapping, which is really like the most Sony name ever, and unfortunately, it's only going to be supported on Sony TVs, some very specific Sony TVs that are going to be very expensive. So if you are looking for a new TV and you want to know which Sony TVs are going to support this, over on the high end, you have the Sony Z9J, which is an 8K TV that's about 85 inches long at its biggest size, and it comes in at around $9,000. So yeah, that is a very small pool of people who I think are going to be wanting to go out and buy that TV. But I saw it's on like Amazon and Best Buy, so if you got that much money laying around and you want an 8K TV, go for it. But if you're looking for something on the cheaper end, you have the Sony X90J. Now that's not an OLED panel, it's just an LCD panel, and it's 4K, and that one comes in at around $1,000. But realistically, if you wanted to take advantage of this feature in the best possible way, I would look at an OLED TV, and if you want to do that, Sony actually makes the TV that's considered to be the best OLED on the market, and that one is called the A90J, and it rolls in at around $3,700 depending on what size you're going for. I would go for that 55 inch at $3,700. It's still way out of my price range, but again, it's considered to be the best possible OLED you can buy. So if you want to take advantage of HDR tone mapping, that seems like the one to go with. This is really tricky to talk about because at its core, it's a good feature to add to the PS5 post-launch, especially for free. Now you do have to go out and buy a new TV that takes advantage of it, but unless you bought a Dolby Vision TV like 6 months ago hoping that that feature would come to the PS5, I don't think you're really in a different spot than if you're looking for a new TV anyway. And it's not like Sony makes crappy TVs, right? Like they're widely considered to be making the best OLED in the entire industry. All of that is good. I just don't like that there's already a service called Dolby Vision, which is widely supported by pretty much every TV brand out there, and a lot of game developers are already porting their games over to Dolby Vision, and if they brought Dolby Vision to the PS5, it would be a lot easier to make the PS5 games that are available on the Xbox Series X and Dolby Vision work on the PS5, right? But again, it's really expensive. I'm sure a lot of you guys know a lot more about this than me, so let me know if this is something you'd actually go out and upgrade your TV for down in the comments below. All right guys, so at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that if you have a disc-based PS5, I've got a big update for you, and you definitely should have stuck around for this because my friend Mr. Matty Plays has joined us to talk about how his PS5 is shredding his game discs. How's it going, Matty?
So what happened was I leave my game discs in my console for extended periods of time because I do a lot of game reviews, so I'll have a couple of digital copies come in while a disc sits in the PS5 for some stretch of time. And what happened was after some of my reviews were done, I went to take out my copy of Neo: The World Ends With You, which had sat there for just about over a month. When I hit the eject button and I pulled it out, I was getting ready to put it in the case and I actually felt a legitimate scratch on my hand. No damage was done, but I looked down and I'm like, what happened? And I see that my disc is actually damaged. It's chipped, serrated. So what happened was I started thinking to myself, is this the PS5? And I went back to discs that were sitting inside the console for an extended period of time, like my copy of Mega Man Zero Collection, and I saw that there was damage done to that. I eventually took to social media and said, hey, is anyone else having this problem? And what I learned was I'm actually not alone on this.
Were you able to figure out why this was happening on your discs?
Yeah, so I did some investigating through everyone's responses. I said in the video I posted for it, hey, please let me know if your console is vertical or horizontal, because when I first got my PS5, I thought that monstrosity could not fit on the stand horizontally that they gave us. It just did not ever look steady, and it never quite locked it in place. And what seemed to be the case was if your PlayStation 5 is standing vertically, your disc should be okay. From what I've seen, no one who had their console standing up straight had any problems. But for myself and multiple others who had their console lying down horizontally, that's where the problem seemed to crop up. So my thought process is that this is a situation where with the disc spinning so fast in the PlayStation 5, as many of us know, it rapidly spins that thing, and they had to even release firmware to slow it down, is that it's either rubbing up against something in there because it's spinning so fast and it's hitting something within the disk drive that is chipping or sanding down at the bare minimum the edge of the disc. I'm not moving my system ever when the disc is spinning. I never move my console ever. It's number one, way too big, and two, I have no reason to move it out of my room. So that's the most I could really figure out with this, but people are having this problem beyond myself.
I also have my PS5 set horizontally, and I will say, you're right, it is harder to get the PS5 onto the stand, right? Like they have those little PlayStation symbols on the back that you line up with the little clips, but they're not like really hard clips, you know, like if it's just on the stand, it's just resting there, and then you slide it backwards into the entertainment center, in mine at least, and I can't use it vertically there. And that's all besides the point, which is that the PS5 definitely should not be doing this. And it's kind of alarming that multiple people were hitting you back talking about this. Just, man, to know that it's because it's horizontal and it's because it's revving the disc so fast, it's super frustrating. And you're a reviewer, right? Like, I don't know if you guys have seen Maddie's channel, Mr. Maddie Plays. He plays RPGs, extremely long games. So it's like, if your PS5 is your main console, the fact that you're gonna have to send it back to Sony on possibly a month-long process and have it out of commission, that's not good for your job.
Yes, exactly that. Especially in the case of, it goes both ways, right? Whether I'm reviewing a game or I've been sent 2 digital codes to create content for, while a disc from an old game that I was maybe just playing for myself is sitting in there. I shouldn't have to worry that in that time that it's going to grind down my disc, because what happens is the PS5 is just checking to see if the disc is in there, just to make sure it's there. And so they'll spin it really fast for 15, 20 seconds and it stops. And it's been doing this for a while where I just don't even think about it. I've gotten used to it. But now it's caused me to, when I heard it again, I'm like, let me pop the disc out because I'm playing digitally right now. I don't need the disc in there. And it's a extra half step that really isn't anything more than a nuisance. It's nothing that should drive you away from buying a PS5 in my position, but it is worrisome that over time these games I'm spending money on can get destroyed, because, you know, we already as physical collectors worry about things like disc rot for how games sit on the shelves and how you preserve them there. You don't need another factor in there of if your PS5 is going to pretty much saw you down.
Maddie, thank you so much for joining me here on PSReady. I've been trying to get you on for a while now. You run Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, but you're more console agnostic on your main channel. So I'm glad that I got you on. Unfortunately, it had to be for a negative topic in the news.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back on. Thank you for having me, and I do hope next time I'm on, I'm spreading the good word of PlayStation. Maybe talking about like a new PlayStation Vita. Who knows? That'd be really awesome to see. But, you know, other than that, thank you for having me.
And if you guys want to see the whole rundown on this entire situation with some nice B-roll footage of the shredded disc, Maddie has a channel called Retro Rebound. It'll be linked down in the description. And his main channel is Mr. Maddie Plays. Definitely check both out, because when I'm not looking up PlayStation news and I want to know what's going on in the gaming industry as a whole, Maddie's channel is the one I go to. Anyway, guys, that's all the PlayStation news I have for you today. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comments below. And remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.